He would ride into the city on a donkey rather than a war horse, signifying that he came in peace. The true king would be compassionate and deliver the needy and the afflicted from oppression. And I think the members of Matthew's community would have also remembered Psalm 72, a royal song about the righteous king. And hear these words: "He will defend the afflicted among the people and save the children of the needy. He will endure as long as the sun, as long as the moon, through all generations. He will be like rain falling on the mown field, like showers watering the earth. In his days the righteous will flourish. Prosperity will abound till the moon is no more. He will rule from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. He will deliver the needy who cry out, the afflicted who have no one to help. He will take pity on the weak and save the needy. He will rescue them from oppression and violence, for precious is their blood in his sight." And to drive home the plight of the needy, Jesus made a courageous move. He walked into the temple, into the court of the Gentiles where all the business of religion was done, and drove out the money changers and those who sold sacrificial animals. Doves in particular are mentioned because doves were the only sacrifice the poor could afford. By covenantal law, it was decreed that at the birth of a child, a sacrifice was to be made. As a sin offering, a sacrifice was to be made. Many Jewish people did without basic necessities to be able to follow the sacrificial law, while the temple institution and the temple officials grew wealthy. And right in the temple, in the outer court of the Gentiles, Jesus confronts this abuse. And then Matthew tells us that the lame and the blind came to Jesus at the temple and he healed them. Now the blind and the lame were not permitted into the temple because of their afflictions. In many respects, the temple had become exclusive. It cut off the lame, the blind, the poor, the Gentiles from the knowledge and worship of the true and living God. By clearing out the court of the Gentiles of the business of religion, by healing the infirm who could not go into the temple, Jesus smashed open the gates of the temple so that all could come in and worship. And in doing so, made his death inevitable, for the ruling authorities could not have their authority challenged and still remain in power, still be the buffer between the people and the Roman authority and the Roman military who were right outside the temple gates. The story of Jesus riding into Jerusalem on a donkey was an enacted prophetic word telling all Jerusalem that their true king had arrived. He was the Messiah that they had been waiting for hundreds of years. Not a military king, not a priestly king, not a prophetic king, but the true King of God who was all three, prophet, priest, and king. Both priest and sacrifice, king and servant. And he still is. He is humble. That is totally under the authority of God and God's purpose, which is to bring salvation to the needy and the weak and protect them from violence and oppression. He is peaceful, does not wage war by force of arms or bring peace by force of arms as the Romans did, as we try and do. But he trusts God to bring about peace for all nations through the power of God. And he is universal. Jesus is the Messiah King who rules from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth, all around the globe. In Matthew's Gospel, the kingship of Christ is proclaimed throughout the text. His throne speech is the Sermon on the Mount. You'll find that in Matthew 5. It's a very long piece. It's a lot of Jesus' teachings are put right in there. And if you've ever tried to truly live it out, you will know how absolutely difficult it is. well. Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. When you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. This is the rule of law that the subjects are to follow. For the humble, universal King of peace rules through the obedience of his subjects. And that is all of us. When we obey his law and give generously, forgive unconditionally, worship in spirit and in truth, and live joyously as his free, redeemed children, we proclaim his rule in our lives. When we walk with our neighbor through illness or grief, when we give potatoes to feed our neighbor, when we open up this building to provide a place for the night to anyone who needs it, when we actively work to provide affordable housing for those who don't have housing, when we look for ways to help our neighbor here and around the world, we are following the way of a just peace, which is the rule of the King of Peace. Now, in Matthew's Gospel, the culmination of the King's reign is the parable of the sheep and the goats, and this is the last parable that Jesus told before his death. Set outside of time and space, the King descends, and all people recognize and acknowledge him as King. And of course, the King divides his subjects, putting some on his right and some on his left. And those on his right, identified as the righteous sheep, say, Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we ever see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we ever see you sick or in prison and go to visit you? And the King replies, I tell you the truth, whatever you did to the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you have done for them.